We now welcome his father-in-law, Arnold Roth, joining us from Jerusalem. Arnold, thank you so much for joining us. It's with such a heavy heart we welcome you, because this is the second time you and your family have suffered at the hand of Hamas terrorists. First, when your daughter Malki was killed in a suicide bombing at the Sparrow Pizzeria in Jerusalem. That was back in 2001. And now your son-in-law, Naftali Gordon, has been killed while fighting in Gaza earlier this month. Condolences to you and your family. How are you, and how is your daughter Pesi doing?
She's the principal victim, of course. She lost her sister when she was 9 years old, and her sister was 15. And those were black days and a very dark period in our lives. Pesi's now a mother of 2 little children, a loving marriage, a loving husband, married 4 years, and suddenly it's almost beyond words. Her husband, who rushed away on the 7th of October on Simchat Torah, notwithstanding that they are Shomrei Mitzvot, people who observe Jewish law, he jumped into his car and was at his base before noon. And 2 months later, on the 7th of December, he was killed inside a tank in Shajaya, in the this infernal battlefield, which is still burning today. And Pesi is confronting the same horror along with the family around her. It's incomprehensible.
We are looking at pictures of Naftali and Pesi and their 2 little girls. Unimaginable what your family has gone through. Tell us a little bit more about Naftali. Tell us about him.
Naftali was in our family's life for a little over 4 years. It was a clear love match between Pesi and Naftali. The wedding was a moment of utter joy. They are both very fine people. I love my daughter. I loved my son-in-law. He was one of the finest, gentlest people I ever knew. A physiotherapist, as I now know, very highly regarded in the Kuppah where he worked and among his colleagues. They lived just a short distance down the street from us because we really wanted them as close as possible. And it's just incomprehensible that he's been taken from us. And let me add that it's not as if losing our daughter Malki is somehow consigned to the dustbin of history. We're still fighting to see her extradited from Jordan after all these years. She faces charges in the United States, and we continue to get treated with the utmost disdain by the United States government, even as it says, yes, 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 this is a foremost priority for the United States. Having to bear up in the face of that open hypocrisy, that politicization of justice, causes us, my wife and I and the family around us, to look at the war against Hamas in a whole different way. And just to say that in a slightly different way in one sentence, Hamas, which has brought this war into Israel by the atrocities of October the 7th, is still celebrating the freedom of the woman who blew up the Sparrow Pizzeria. And it's all thanks to the Jordanian king and his willingness to breach his treaty with the United States.
And Arnold, we know you have been waging this campaign for the extradition of Ahlam Tamimi since she was released in Israel in that prisoner swap with Hamas and then sent to her native Jordan. She chose the target. She guided the bomber there, was arrested weeks later, and then sentenced to 16 life sentences. Since her release, she boasted that she was pleased with the high death toll. Tell us more about that fight for justice, given something we've been discussing here in studio, the U.S. support right now for Israel and its fight against Hamas. How does the U.S. support for the current fight against Hamas get impacted by your fight? As you say, it's been more than 2 decades.
So I'm very cautious about ever expressing any firm views about what political decisions mean when they are made by very powerful organizations like the government of the United States. And it's not a political partisan issue from my point of view. There are probably people watching who are thinking to themselves, oh yes, he's a Democrat, so he's against the Republicans, or the opposite, he's a Republican and he's against President Biden. No, we've been abandoned insulted, offended, and betrayed by both sides of the Congress, by the apathy of American Jewish leadership. The results speak for themselves. Here we are, so many years after losing Malki, so many years after Tamimi was finally charged, so many years after the world outlawed Hamas, and we still find that we're talking to the wall. I don't want to mix the two issues any more than I already have. Losing the father of two little toddler granddaughters is an awful experience. It's unspeakably awful. But to know that the crocodile tears of the politicians who say we must fight or we must not fight, we must have a ceasefire, or no, we have to press for victory, it's all nonsense. It's all political calculations. And for somebody who is in love with his family, as I am, it's heartbreaking to see how much falseness and dishonesty you can be surrounded by when very important people decide to make their views known to you. Sorry to sound bitter, but of course I am deeply bitter.
Well, certainly it is difficult to imagine the pain that you and your family are going through once again. I'm not sure if you are comfortable to do this, but if you could right now give a message to leaders in Israel, in the US, in Jordan, any leaders, what would that message be right now, given the current situation?
The entry of a person into politics is not an opportunity to forget that you have some spine or some principles. There are principles. Israel confronted horror, an atrocity that has no parallel in modern history on the 7th of October. And in fighting back, despite what the New York Times says and so many other politically spun commentators, this isn't about vengeance. It's about saving our families, saving our country. These people make it abundantly clear, the Hamas, the monsters of Hamas, that given the opportunity, they'll do this again, and they will. We must destroy their war-making capacity, and if politicians don't get behind us, everybody's going to pay a price for their pusillanimity.
Thank you so much for speaking to us. Once again, condolences to you and your family. May Naftali's memory be a blessing. May Malki's memory be a blessing. Arnold Roth speaking to us from Jerusalem. Thank you so much for being with us once again on I-24 News.